All right, it's that time of week again. We have a different kind of power rankings. This is an analytical approach at power rankings, so this is not predicting anything. This is simply talking about what we've seen. So if you've never seen this before, basically the way it works is I'm using analytics to determine how valuable each position grouping is, and then saying, how good was each team at that position grouping, and therefore how many wins should you be projected over a 17-game schedule. Really, this I feel like is less about, I think kind of the more interesting factor here is how lucky were you / how well coached were you, that kind of stuff. How good of a team is it really? And then kind of, maybe a better way to think about it is how many wins have you earned as opposed to how many wins do you actually have, so to speak, sort of like a war type concept. The way I determine who placed in which spot in the position grouping, I just use Pro Football Focus grades. It's not perfect, but I tend to think that they're more right than they're wrong, so I like using that. Except for kickers. Kickers, I just use field goal percentage. Again, not the most perfect solution, but that's what I'm going with. So yeah, let's just get into it. All right, so the bottom four should come at relatively no surprise. These seemingly are the bottom four. Maybe what is a surprise is the Houston Texans. So again, just real quick, again, if you're new here, so the bottom, that's just your key. So for example, if you look at the top left of the top thing, the Lions offensive line gets them 1.14 wins. So you can look down at the bottom key. That means they have a tier 3 offensive line. Everything is separated into 5 tiers, and then the thing on the top, that's how many wins are earned per each position group. All the way over to the right, you have total per a 17-game season. So then how many wins you've earned so far through this point in the season and how many wins you actually have. So yeah, 32, the Texans are not good. A lot of zeros here. In fact, only a couple of things aren't zeros. So they get some wins for kicker, they get some for pass rush, and some for run defense. Not a lot. The tier 2 pass rush, okay, you got that going for you. Not too much else. So kicking's been, tier 4, better than tier 5. Tough situation for Houston. Number 31, now you have the New York Jets here. So Jets offensive line's been tier 3. That's pretty much been the only good thing about them. I mean, I thought Zach Wilson played better. Again, it's a learning curve. Hasn't been as great as a rookie, but he still is a rookie. Number 30, kind of similar vibe with the Jaguars, similar stuff. The rookie quarterback has looked like a rookie, no surprise there. And they got at least a little bit of better stuff across the board, but still not much. 29, the Detroit Lions here. The biggest difference with the Lions is, A, they have a tier 3 kicker, the Jaguars and Jets each with tier 5, and then they also have a tier 4 quarterback. So that, along with its solid offensive line, there's stuff to like about this Lions team. Not a lot, but there at least is stuff to like about them. They still have some work to do, though, of course. Next 4, we have first the Pittsburgh Steelers at 28. The Steelers, I mean, they're just always going to underperform. I mean, there's just no denying that this algorithm hates the way the Steelers are constructed, but they actually have been doing okay. And part of it, I do think, is listen, coaching can matter, and I think it's showing. Mike Tomlin has severely gotten his team to be better than the actual talent is for some time now. He uses his talent well. He has a good run defense and good pass rush, so he uses that and sort of lets players drop back into coverage, that kind of stuff, which is smart. He'll play cover too. He's not afraid to do that. Not afraid to blitz either, but they kind of, they dial it up at the right time. There's just not a lot else to love, although, Big Ben's played a little bit better, but still. Only 3.2 wins earned. They're at 6.5 wins on the season. So good stuff from Mike Tomlin and the coaching staff, getting a lot of wins out of maybe not the most talented roster. Next, we have the Panthers. And listen, you could argue this is a lost season, but there's stuff to like about this Panthers team still. Coverage has been very good. That's what you got going for yourself, is your defense has played very well, and you could argue it's looked worse when the offense has been inept. They need to fix the quarterback. They need to fix the receiving core. They ran Joe Brady out of town. I think that I didn't love the move just because, I get that the results weren't there, but I think it's more of a team roster construction thing than it is actually an offensive coordinator thing, but that's just my opinion on it. Moving on to number 26, the Seahawks, who, what a fall from grace they have. They currently, are still getting credit for a tier 3 quarterback play, which is a lot worse than we thought it would be heading into the season. Tier 4 wide receiver play, a lot worse than we thought it would be heading into the season. They stopped the run well. don't do much else well on defense. So rough situation for Seattle, kind of in a weird spot. Number 25, the Giants, are another team kind of in a weird spot where you could move on from Daniel Jones, but he hasn't been horrible, but he hasn't been great either. Like tier 3, that kind of feels right to me. Coverage has been solid. And the receiving core, you do hope that, like, okay, if it gets healthy next season, it'll be a lot better than tier 4, but, really need to improve several things, especially that offensive line, which is a mess. All right, next 4. First, we have the Chicago Bears here at number 24. So again, they're doing all right. Like the Bears, not awful teams. I feel like once you get to this spot, we do kind of, there is a bit of a jump in win total where you have over a win separating the number 24 team and the number 25 team. You look at Chicago, like tier 4 quarterback play, some of that has been Dalton, some of that has been Fields. You have the offensive line, which has been solid this year, which is true. People crushed the offensive line, and it's had some really bad games. But you look at the whole body of work, and it has been pretty solid. Like, same thing with the receiving core. It's been inconsistent, but tier 3 does kind of check out. That's not tier 1. I think that's fair. And you got some other stuff across the board defensively. It hasn't been spectacular, although there also have been injuries there. So 4.4 wins earned, only 4 wins. So they haven't really underperformed their talent level at all, but that's where they're at. The Atlanta Falcons, who are right at, both the Falcons and the Saints, interestingly, are given 5.0 wins earned. They both have exactly 5 wins on the board. You have Atlanta here where, Matt Ryan, tier 3 quarterback, that checks out to me. And then, offensive line, another case of very inconsistent offensive line play. Same thing with the receiving core. Cordero Patterson matters a lot to this team in both the running game and the receiving game. So he's definitely very important. And then defense hasn't been spectacular, but we kind of knew that going in. Number 22, the New Orleans Saints, who obviously losing Winston has hurt, although they were tier 4 quarterback play according to PFF before Winston went down. Offensive line still solid. And then, defense still good, but they're just too banged up right now. The receiving core, which maybe has overperformed at tier 4, still not a great receiving core. And the main thing is we thought this would be a tier 1 running game, but with Kamara out, that just hasn't been how that's worked out. Number 21, the Baltimore Ravens here, who it's interesting that the algorithm has constantly said the Ravens are lower than I think most people, including myself, would have them at. I think a big part of it is it just doesn't know how to grade Lamar Jackson. And I've said this a while where Lamar is just what he kind of just the impact of what his name is, him being Lamar Jackson and how teams have to play him adds impact. So that's not really calculated in here. So that's why I've always kind of put an asterisk on the Ravens. They're better than this. But still, you look at what they have, good offensive line, solid receiving core, again, in that tier 3 range, and then they have some points across the board. But with the coverage, too many injuries, it's really kind of been a frustrating situation. We thought that would be tier 1 heading into this season. So that's where you're losing some stuff. And again, I think Lamar is a tier 1 quarterback. He's at least tier 2. So you add a couple of wins there, maybe even 3 wins there. That's going from a bad team to a playoff team. Okay, so next 4 here, we have at number 20, that's the Balls. That is the Washington football team. Hey, they're moving up in the world a little bit. I mean, they're still a team that isn't spectacular, but I think some people would say, oh, well, they're kind of a team that's overperformed a little bit these past few games. According to this, no. 5.8 wins earned. They have 6 wins. That checks out. It's on the strength of, really, they'd have great line play. Tier 1 offensive line, and then tier 1 run defense and tier 1 pass rush, and that's been consistent throughout this season. So the other stuff isn't spectacular, but you can kind of game plan around that, which they've started to do recently, which I hadn't done previously. So just some good stuff by Washington. Are they a playoff team? I don't know, but they got a shot. Number 19, the Chiefs, who are, I think that they're better than this, but this is kind of where it goes to. This is representative of what you've done so far this season, not necessarily representative of how much you will do in the future. Like, tier 3 quarterback play for Mahomes, that's fair for how he's played this season, but we all know Mahomes, when he's on, is an elite quarterback and is the best quarterback in football when he's on. Tier 1 offensive line has been really good. Like, Mahomes holds onto the ball longer than any quarterback in football, so that's why it doesn't look as good as it actually is. So there's that factor. You would like the receiving core to be a little better, but they actually have started to cover very well. Tier 2 coverage unit. That makes a difference. Don't do a lot else well on defense, but if you can do that, you can have a consistent defense. So Kansas City looking on the up and up. Number 18, you do have the Denver Broncos here. They also have Tier 3 quarterback play, but again, very different Tier 3 quarterback play than Mahomes' Tier 3 quarterback play. They got some stuff across the board, but there's been some disappointments with Denver. I mean, their coverage being Tier 4, that's disappointing. We thought that would be Tier 1 and maybe just 1 overall, just best coverage unit in football. Hasn't exactly worked out that way. Solid offensive line, good receiving core, but they're still... they're a few pieces away for sure. Number 17, the Miami Dolphins, another team that's kind of, on the up and up. And, at 8.62 wins, this is the highest they've been at any point this season, including when I just gave a prediction before this season of where they would end up. So good for them. They have started to improve. And the clear thing that jumps out at you is just Tier 2 quarterback play from Tua. I mean, that's just fantastic to see. Their coverage, which has had its ups and downs this season, is currently at Tier 2 as well. So those two things doing well. Receiving core at one point, I believe, was Tier 5. So it being up to Tier 3, that's very good. So Dolphins looking better. Will it be enough to be a playoff spot? I don't know, but I'm not ruling it out, whereas earlier I was ruling it out. Next 4, so we have the Cleveland Browns here at 16. The Tier 4 quarterback play is really what's hurting them, along with Tier 4 receiving play. We thought those could both be a lot higher heading into this season. Still really good offensive line, solid running game. Again, we thought that would be Tier 1 as well heading into this season. Good run defense as well, and great coverage unit. But it's really just those two things. The quarterback play and the receiving play has not been what we wanted it to be. So again, maybe that'll get better. We'll see. Number 15, the Chargers here. So the Chargers, currently another team that's, a lot of these teams, at least 3 out of the 4 on this list, are right around where their wins earned are. And number 13 we'll get to in a second. But for the Chargers, good offensive line, really good quarterback play from Herbert, and solid receiving core. And they're covering well. We know that they don't stop the run well, but we also know that's partially by design. So this is where the Chargers are at. That feels right. And the Colts just keep on climbing. They had this slow start, and that might end up being what doesn't allow them into the postseason. We'll see. But there's still a lot to like about this Colts team. Tier 1 running back play from Jonathan Taylor. That really helps. Tier 3 quarterback play from Carson Wentz. Obviously, that really helps. Good, solid offensive line, but it's actually better than Tier 3, I think. It was just so banged up early on. That's always going to, those factor in. Injuries still come into play here in this list. And then defense coverage is probably a big surprise, I think. It was horrible early on. They've started to cover a lot better as of late. I'm not sure if it's schematically or what they're doing, but that being Tier 3 is a huge upgrade. So the Colts absolutely have a shot at the postseason. And 13, Cardinals fans are going to get mad, but listen, this is not really how I think most people would actually say the Cardinals should be at. If you look at quarterback play, that is because they had Colt McCoy in for a few games. Kyler is a top 5 rated quarterback, but he's just missed a few games. So I think there's an asterisk there. And same thing with Hopkins missing from the receiving core. If you just add, put them up to Tier 1 quarterback play instead of Tier 2 quarterback play with Kyler, then what happens is they immediately go to the 5th ranked team in football, which feels a lot more fair. And again, you put the receiving core up there, it gets even higher. So I believe that would actually put them at either 3rd or 2nd. So a lot to like about this Arizona team. I'm very high on Arizona. I also think part of it is they have overperformed a little bit, but that's because they're well coached. So that's also why you're going to overperform as well. So yes, there is a big disparity in wins earned versus actual wins, but I think that's a little bit more a flaw of the algorithm than like the Cardinals have been lucky, but that's just my reading on it. I've been wrong about this stuff in the past. And, I keep saying more often than not, when something in the algorithm surprises me, the algorithm ends up being right more than me being right. But I think I'm right about this. We'll see. Next 4, we have the Green Bay Packers here. I think a lot of people might also say that we're too low on the Packers. The algorithm is too low on Green Bay. I think that the quarterback play is the biggest difference between people's perception of Green Bay and maybe how Green Bay actually is. I actually think this might be closer to accurate than people realize. Maybe Rodgers have been Tier 2. I think that would be fair to say, which would put it pretty close to even in terms of, it would still be a bit of they've been, overperformed, but part of it is they're well coached, so they should overperform. But other than that, I don't hate a lot of this. Like, the offensive line's been injured, so that's a factor. Like, same thing of coverage. You know, their entire defense really has been injured. So I think this is fair to say, because again, injuries are factored in. If your backups have to play, well, your backups are the ones who get graded, so they're going to be lower. So that's kind of why this is a fascinating thing to talk about. It's not necessarily supposed to be predictive. It's supposed to talk about who's overperformed, who's underperformed. Packers have overperformed. That's not a bad thing. Number 11, the Tennessee Titans here. So you have, another team that they're kind of right where they're at. The interesting thing with them, though, still is, like, how good are they without Derrick Henry? How good are they with their, wide receiver injuries, all that stuff? But, at least, the receivers should get back at some point. And then, obviously, the running game is still up in the air. Tier 1 coverage, that's cool. Tier 2 quarterback play, that's good. But you just, you need more than that to win a Super Bowl. But you don't need more than that to make the playoffs, really. So I think they'll be a playoff team, especially with 8 wins already on their record. Number 10, the Raiders, who have been a very fascinating team. I mean, the Raiders are a team that at one point was number 1 on this list. I think they've even been in the bottom half at some point as well. So they've had some ups and downs. Tier 1 wide receiver play and Tier 2 quarterback play is really the strength of this team. Tier 1 pass rush as well, that helps. Tier 3 coverage could be worse. The offensive line is a mess, quite frankly. They made some moves in the offensive line. I get why they made them, but it did not work out. They currently are a team that, according to this, has underperformed. I think that's fair. I think that there's been some coaching missteps along the way on top of this. So they're a playoff caliber team, but will they make the playoffs? I just don't know. And number 9, the 49ers, who I know that they lost to the Seahawks, but I still think that they're a pretty good team. I think that, Tier 1 offensive line, Trent Williams has been, like, ridiculously awesome. Tier 1 receiving core, that's a bit of a surprise. I'm not sure if I'd have him that high, but has been very good. I'm not saying I wouldn't have him that high. I'd have to think about it. And Tier 3 quarterback play. Like, this is what the offense is built around. And even though the running game is, 0 wins earned, which means either Tier 4 or Tier 5, I don't know exactly how correct, how fair that is, I guess is what I should say, because obviously the Kyle Shanahan scheme gets anyone to be able to rush for a solid amount of yards. Coverage unit has also been very good, and they've stopped the run well. So they do a lot well. They're actually a team who's been unlucky is probably what I would say, either unlucky or poorly coached, but I think I would say unlucky. Although, again, should mention that the 49ers did underperform a little bit last year, according to what their talent was. So, I don't know, but I'm willing to probably chalk it up to luck. Next couple of surprises here with number 8 and number 7 here. I mean, listen, the Vikings and the Eagles are two teams that have consistently done very well in this algorithm, despite the fact that people might not necessarily think too highly of them. I mean, the Vikings, what it could simply come down to is, PFF loves Kirk Cousins and has him as tier 1, and if you have him as like tier 3, well then they go way down and they're dropping to about like a 9-win team, which feels a lot more right. That puts them right sort of, in the top half, but still sort of maybe in like that 14 to 16 range, which feels a bit more accurate. But at the same time, Kirk Cousins has been very good. I don't think it's totally fair to say he's been a tier 3 quarterback. I think he has played well. I think, to me, this is as simple as they have been poorly coached and haven't really lived up to what they can live up to. So I think it's more of a coaching thing. That's how I view the Vikings, but I know some people would blame the Kirk Cousins grade, so I figured I'd bring up both. But yeah, they're a team that's currently, if they have met their expectations, they'd have 8 wins and instead only 5. Number 7, another team that could have 8.6. Instead, they just have 6 wins. It is the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, they couldn't literally have 8.6 wins. That's not possible, but you know what I mean. For the Eagles, really good offensive line. Tier 3 quarterback play, which I think is fair. Minshew might have helped that, actually, as opposed to hurt it. And then really good running game. And that's kind of what's been the strength of this team, is the running game. They do have a good receiving core on top of this. Not a great one. It's been inconsistent, so that's why it's tier 3. But still, some stuff there. Same thing with their coverage. So, yeah, I mean, really what it comes down to is it's that running game. If you don't think they should be this high, it's because you don't think they have a tier 1 rushing game. But I don't know how fair that is to say. Number 6, the Buffalo Bills. Josh Allen is at tier 3. PFF hates Josh Allen. We all know this. It's just their algorithm does not work well with Allen. I'd have him higher than that, but that's just where I'm at. Running game has been very good. They're very pro Bills running game. They have been for a lot. So again, not sure if I agree with that, but you kind of say, hey, I've been saying this basically every week, take those 2 wins away and give them to the quarterback play. It kind of ends up being a wash right there, so I don't really harp on that too much. Receiving core being tier 3 is fair. Like, it has gotten shut down at times, has also had its moments though as well. And then, great coverage unit. But as we saw last week, run defense might be good, but it can be ran on, and that has happened. But still, I like this Bills team. I think the Bills are good. They have them as an 8.1 win team that's underperformed. I think that's fair to say. Number 5, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, who have a tier 1 quarterback in Joe Burrow. How about that? There you go. Good for Joe Burrow. I'm not quite sure if I would say he's been tier 1 this season, but he has been good. Like, tier 2, I'll totally co-sign for sure. Solid offensive line, good receiving core at tier 2, and then you have some points on defense as well. Defense has had its ups and downs though, but still, for Cincinnati, I think that, again, they probably don't belong in the top 5 because I don't think Joe Burrow really has earned that tier 1 quarterback play, in my opinion, but he still has been very good, so move them down a little bit, but certainly keep them pretty high. All right, top 4 here. So number 4, you have the Dallas Cowboys. Dak Prescott had fallen out of tier 1 quarterback play a bit, but he's back there now. Tier 1 receiving core, tier 1 offensive line, and tier 2 running game. If that can get up to tier 1, we're talking about a perfect offense, which it had been at points this season. And then solid coverage unit. It's had its ups and downs, but again, mediocre. That feels about right. So for this, what you have is an 8.7 win earned team that's won 8 games. And for the Rams, they're pretty similar. I mean, they've earned 8.8 wins and they've won 8 games. You look at them across the board. Tier 1 offensive line, tier 2 quarterback, which, yeah, that's where Stafford is. I agree with that. Tier 2 receiving core, I also agree with that. And then you have some points on your defense. Good run defense, good coverage, or solid coverage. Again, mediocre. And then good pass rush. So that's kind of where they're at. Obviously, Aaron Donald helps a lot with that. And hey, tier 1 kicking, that matters. And how about those top 2? I mean, incredible. So, Tom Brady and Bill Belichick are in the top 2. For number 2, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers with tier 2 offensive line and tier 1 quarterback play. In fact, both the Patriots have tier 1 offensive line and tier 2 offensive lines and tier 1 quarterback play. Patriots remaining here at the top, which is just incredible. They've been here for at least 3 out of 4 weeks, maybe all 4, because I missed a week for Thanksgiving week. But according to PFF, the Patriots receiving core has actually outperformed the Buccaneers receiving core, which I actually think is fair given the injuries Tampa Bay's receiving core has had this season. I think that's actually, you can make that argument. For the run game, New England Patriots, listen, I like what Leonard Fournette has done this season, but clearly he's no Damian Harris, he's no Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe he is, maybe you could argue that, but the Patriots running game has been elite. It has been tier 1. We saw that when they won a football game, only throwing 3 times. And then the defenses, both these teams have credit for tier 1 coverage, which is surprising to me. I'm not quite sure I'd quite go that far, but they've both been good. Both tier 3 pass rush, that seems fine to me. And then the Patriots stopped the run a little bit better than Tampa Bay. So the real difference between these two teams, you got a little bit of kicking in there, and then you have the running game. New England Patriots, for a 17-game season, have 16.76 projected wins. They're actually one of the teams that's underperformed the most, but part of it is, okay, yeah, you're not going to win every single game, so you're going to underperform a little. Tampa Bay kind of right where they should be, 9.5 wins earned, 9 wins total. This is also part of why I think looking at this, it's hard to make the Bill Belichick Coach of the Year argument. Maybe you should make the Bill Belichick GM of the Year argument because of how good of a job he did turning this talent team around. But the flip side, of course, is like how much credit do you give a coach for making the talent live up to their potential, right? It's not just getting the talent. You have to coach them up, and he's obviously done a great job at that. So does he deserve Coach of the Year? Maybe, maybe not. He'll probably win it, but it's a fascinating situation. And then, for Tampa Bay and Tom Brady's, on pace to win the MVP. And how fun would it be if these two teams played each other in the Super Bowl? That would be very fun. So yeah, those are all 32 teams. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know, what are your thoughts in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.